So this is my first cow, so bear with me. Now, during a cow, there is still the public input. Is that correct at the beginning? Okay. And as every other meeting for now, we're going to move that to the end. And we need a resolution on that, or do you do resolutions during cow? Sorry, Ann, I don't have you.
Yeah, you can hear me now?
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah, for some reason I can't use my headphones.
I can't hear you at all, Ann.
Just speak a little louder and we'll turn our speakers up.
Yeah, I've got computer problems. Let me see if I can turn up the volume. How's that? 100%.
There we go.
Hear me better now?
Yes.
So, Mayor Baker, no, we don't do resolutions generally at COW. They're informal. They're council meetings, but they're business meetings rather than meetings to pass resolutions.
Okay, thank you. There's introduction of late items. So since it's an informal meeting, should we talk about the introduction of late items right now? Ann?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Did you all receive a copy of the letter sent to the minister, Jordan, today?
Yeah, I did, yes.
From
Yes.
North Island Mayors?
Yes.
Yes. No.
So Andy has, the mayor from Campbell River, has requested that on correspondence that are going to the ministers and to the provincial government, that our logo also goes on with theirs, with the four others, and with my name on there as well. So does anybody have any objections to that?
No objection. I think it needs to be on there.
Sounds good to me.
Councillor Craig?
No, there's no objections.
Okay. And Councillor Tinsley?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move that forward. I'm sending you a lot of the documentation or a lot of the emails back and forth that's happening between Minister Blaney from the NDP, our representative for our area, as well as from Michelle Babchuk, the MLA for the provincial government, and everything that the mayors are corresponding with the BC Salmon Association as well, because I want you guys to always be up to speed on what is happening and where we are. There is some conflict right now with the Minister Rachel Blaney and the group that they're trying to get sorted out. So she does support what the economic impact to our area is. So I will I'll keep you up to date when I have information. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call. Next week at the council meeting, we're going to make a resolution that that I do continue on with this, and that none of us speak to the press as well, because the press is calling. Several different newspapers are calling and asking for comments on that. And right now, I think that we just need to not comment. We need to comment as the North Island together, so we're all united. Any questions?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to do the approval of the agenda, recommended resolution. I need a motion on that, please.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
discussion. Very well. That the agenda of the Committee of the Whole for January 12th, 2021 be approved. Correspondence.
Anne has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Couldn't see it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bolson. I just wanted to point out to the chair that we can't see Councillor Craig. And as this meeting's being recorded, it's probably important to have his face visible for, as part of the meeting.
I
don't know
agree.
if you can hear that, Councillor Craig, but we can't see you here.
I can hear that, and the reason being is because my computer has crashed, so I'm on my cell phone right now, and I'm just restarting my computer now.
Okay,
So I am working on that.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence. Did all of council receive the correspondence? The letters that you wrote, CAO?
Are you asking me that? Because I didn't have that on the agenda. That was sort of just a business kind of a correspondence.
Okay, sorry. Then we'll move on from that then. Okay, so there is no correspondence.
Correct.
Unfinished business. Anyone? No?
No,
Okay, moving on. Staff reports. Staff report the financial plan 2021 to 2025. It's a recommended resolution that the Committee of the Whole receives the financial plan for 2021 to 2025 report for information and discussion. Sorry,
I move that-
sorry. Motion, please.
I move that we receive the plan for information and discussion.
A second.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Very well. The report, please.
Thank you. I think I didn't hear, was that to me that you asked me to proceed with the report?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to introduce this project and then, or this initiative, and then Lisa Clark, the CFO, who has done all of the work on this file, will be presenting a big overview of the financial plan. So even though you have all the pages and it looks like a bit of a mess, she's going to start with the summary page, and that's just a basic overview of the revenues and our costs. And then each of those subsequent pages are the each service, because we're required to show all of those costs by service. So we're proposing to do it in 3 parts. Well, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to go through this strategic plan that was that this is pinned to, and generally the financial plan, the 5-year financial plan, has a link to a strategic plan. So this plan was completed a year ago, almost to the day actually. And so you'll see that the strategic plan and the financial plan are aligned in terms of the expenditures being linked to specific strategic initiatives. So there are basically 7 initiatives in the strategic plan: economic development, infrastructure upgrades and asset replacement, living green, staff professional development, tourism development, village operations, community relations. And so when you go through this, and it's a very short 6 or 7 page document, you'll notice it provides a bit of context around some of the expenditures. You'll want to do this again, probably annually or at least regularly, maybe not in detail, but certainly when the new council's elected, usually looking forward for a 4 or 5 year term, they're going to want to put together their values and their initiatives and try and formulate the spending patterns for the next 5 years. So once, you know, you as a new councillor together are ready to do that, then this is here, and staff was ready to sort of support your discussions on that review. So for today, we're proposing that we talk briefly about that, and that really, by briefly, I meant just that, and then to turn over the mic to Lisa, who will take you through the summary document. Unless there's any questions, what we're proposing is questions on the strategic plan, and then letting Lisa go through her summary document, and if you have questions on that, and then finally, if there's questions on the specific services. And I think that'll help us get through the material in a sort of a smooth, consistent way. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
then I can ask Lisa if she can, maybe Lisa, if you don't mind, are you able to make yourself visible to us?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a webcam accessible right now, and I'll chat with you about that after the meeting, Anne.
That's great. Yeah.
So I guess, did you want to open the floor and to questions about the strategic plan first? Is that what you were thinking?
Well, if there are any, that now would be the time, but I realize you've only had it from today. And so if you've had a chance to go through it, fine. And of course, Lisa led that process from what I understand. So she's also quite capable of answering any questions on the process. Are there any questions on that?
May I make a suggestion? Can we revisit that at the next meeting so everybody does have a chance to go through it? And we'll just do it on the next meeting and people can formulate any questions they like at that time.
Mayor Baker, by next meeting, do you mean the next cow or the next council?
I think the next cow would be sufficient. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, the next cow yeah, that would work for fine.
Does that work for you too, CFO?
Yep, that's fine. My apologies. It was supposed to be included in this agenda package, and I missed it. So apologies for that.
No worries. Does everybody else agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on from the strategic plan.
Okay, so what I've done with this staff report is basically just put together some information about the financial plan. Basically, a financial plan needs to be approved by council by May 15th of every year. And it's important, I think, that council knows that this plan is not a staff plan. Staff can obviously provide recommendations and give suggestions and kind of guide council on what would fit best for the village, but ultimately it's up to council to provide input and approve the plan at the end of the day. So it's your plan. And I think another thing I wanted to mention is you're going to hear us talking about financial plan and budget. The two words are interchangeable. It's the same thing. Financial plan is the budget.
Mhm.
So I've basically just put the financial plan process here again for information purposes. It's just a little chart showing the timetable. And I think that's pretty straightforward. So that's on page 3 and 4 of your agenda. The next section is sort of some decisions that staff are looking to get, get council talking about and figuring out, determining some costs and expenditures that we can now put into the plan. But I think what I'd like to do is just sort of go through this at the end. We can talk about it and just continue on through this report. They're sort of numbered here. So, the first item is council travel, training, and education. I'm hoping council's had a chance to sort of read through that. Again, we can talk about that at the end. Second item is community to community forum for 2020. There may be some issues around COVID-19 holding a C2C for this year, but again, we can talk about that after. Item 3 is a community forest. That was something that has been put in the budget in prior years, and council's asked to sort of think about that, whether that needs to go in to this year's budget, future budget, that sort of thing. Item 4 is the tax increase. So currently I've included it at the historical 2.5% as a starting point. And I've also provided information on water, sewer, and solid waste rate increases. And that's going to be discussed in more detail at the next committee of the whole meeting. And we'll have some better idea of these numbers once some key decisions are made by council due to the COVID-19 Safe Restart grant money. So once we sort of make some decisions on that, then the budget can kind of be, more information, the numbers can be put in better, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Item 5, various operating projects have been listed below. And again, this list will be modified as discussions take place. Capital projects are a completely separate discussion, and I'll have that information at the next committee of the whole meeting. And majority of these projects were scheduled to be completed in 2020 or 2021, so there's a lot of carry forwards, and that's been noted in the chart if it's a carry forward. We've sort of broken it up in relation to the strategic plans, so we've got all of the different categories and where each item falls. So I'm hoping that is helpful for council. And the other thing that I provided for you is the same table that I provided in December, which is the estimated 2020 ending balances of each reserve. That's on page 7 of your agenda. And so I've just listed each reserve, the reserve balance at the beginning of the year, any 2020 withdrawals, 2020 additions, and the estimated balances at the end of this year. And I've got a little star up there for the general surplus. That includes the COVID-19 Safe Restart funds, just as an FYI. On to the next page. Again, more work's needed on capital purchases, including buildings, vehicles, and equipment. I'll provide some more information on that at the next CAL meeting. Most budgets for each department have been adjusted for operational cost increases, so utilities that are going up, increases in revenues, that sort of thing. And there's also several year-end entries that need to be posted over the next 6 weeks, so things will sort of change a little bit. But that's all going to be brought to council as we continue the financial plan process. I'll provide some comparatives year over year on taxes and service fees at the next meeting, and salary and wage changes will also be included in a future meeting. That'll be an in-camera meeting. So as Anne said, if you flip over to page 9 of your agenda, that's basically just a summary page of operating revenues, operating expenditures for the village. Every single sheet behind this summary page, so all of the different departments flow into this summary. And I think this is kind of like a high-level snapshot of where the village stands. You've got your 2020 budget, your 2020 actual, and then your subsequent 2021 to 2025 budgets to review. And I think that's probably all I wanted to say. And like Anne said, I think, you know, if there's any specific questions, feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer them.
Okay, do we have any questions from any of the council members?
There was something I wanted to ask, Mr. Mayor, and this probably isn't the time, but I'd like to put it out there for people to think about. Previously, council had been talking about the resurfacing of Kelsey Way, and I just don't want it to be forgotten about, so that's the only reason I brought it up.
One of the my thoughts on that, if you don't mind me jumping in there, is before we look at spending that kind of money on Kelsey Way, I think we need to look at the infrastructure underneath it first, because you would hate to spend that kind of money to resurface and have that 60-year-old infrastructure go and then have to dig it up and redo it again. So I personally think it should be done together. The infrastructure and then the paving. Any thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of thinking about this resurfacing as part of the infrastructure, but you're talking about pipes and stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the pipes. I'm talking about water sewer.
Yeah.
I'm referring to the water sewer because in order to redo the water and sewer down Kelsey, that has to be dug up, correct? So if we're going to dig it up and we have to repave it, why not do it all at the same time?
I agree, but I don't know where the pipes are, if they're down the middle of the road or they're off to the side.
Well, that's something that we'd get clarification on at that point.
Exactly.
But I think we need to, if everybody's in agreement, we'll get everybody's thoughts, but I think it's something that I believe should be done at the same time. Sorry, go ahead.
If they need to be dug up, I agree with you.
Councillor Craig?
Your microphone's not on, Wes.
Councillor Craig, do you have any comment?
Can you hear me?
There you
Now
are.
I can.
You can hear me?
I
Yes,
can.
we can hear you.
There we go. When's the last time those pipes have been scoped for reliability? Do we need, or do we know if those pipes need to be excavated and replaced, or have we scoped them recently?
That's a question we're going to have to get the CAO to ask our works department. But however, from what I understand, I mean, the infrastructure is very old. So there's an opportunity that there is going to be some work that has to be done. So before we should determine what kind of work has to be done before we pave it. If it does.
That's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
And, or Madam CAO, is that what you're called? Okay, is the drainage report from December 2020 that we received, I believe in that report there are drawings and pictures and different things that show where the culverts go and where the proposed changes and improvements are. So it's pretty pretty explicit in the report. If you have a look at that, you can see that it's a recommended fix because the drainage system is so outdated, and part of that would resolve the flooding issues on Macmillan. So when will we be discussing the drainage project and the report that we got to consider for part of this 2021 budget?
I don't believe we've received the new report yet on the drainage plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ann?
Yes, we actually, Mayor Baker, we received the report late this afternoon. It's a proposal. And
Okay.
I put it on the agenda for next week for council. It's basically a proposal, and I haven't actually looked at it in detail yet, except for the price. And I think from that proposal, they would propose the infrastructure fix, which is where all the money would be. And so it would be reasonable to think that we would be budgeting for that fix in the 2021 financial plan, but we would want to look at where we could be getting sources of funding and, maybe some partnerships and what the options are, and possibly look towards subsequent years. Although in this year, if this drainage report update that they've just provided today, because the authors of the 2000 Highland report that I sent out last week actually came to town and sat down with the mayor and Tony and I last week, along with a new engineer that's taking over from Richard Stevenson. And they offered to do a proposal that was going to look at where we were at today relative to the work they'd done 20 years ago. So that report is on our council meeting for next week. And we'll put further to your direction next week that I think it's around 16, something like that, their proposal. We'll put that budgeted amount in the report or in the financial plan if that's council's direction to go that way.
Yes, please. Everybody agree?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Excellent.
Anyway,
Review that.
I got everybody talking about it. That's what I wanted.
No, that's good. No, we definitely need to discuss it. It's a big issue.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments regarding the financial report? Anybody else want to address at this point, or wait till we get into more detail? Okay, we'll wait and we'll go through it line by line in detail at the next. Okay, so moving on to the second report, staff report on COVID-19, sorry. I stand corrected. Recommended resolution. Can I get a motion that Committee of the Whole receives a COVID-19, that the Committee of the Whole receives the financial plan for 2021 to 2025 be approved? Do I have a motion?
I move
Second?
Aye. be approved.
A second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion?
I think we did that, right?
Did we already do that one?
Yep.
Okay, make it sure. Now we're going to go to the staff report. COVID-19 safe restart, local governments. That the Committee of the Whole will receive the restart grant for local governments proposed expenditures report. That the Committee of the Whole reviews, modifies, and provides direction to staff on the proposed expenditures. And finally, that the Committee of the Whole recommends approval of the expenditures for funding provided to the Village of Sayward from the COVID restart grant. CAO, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you. So Council, this was the item that was on the agenda last week, and Council determined it would be useful to have it on this week's COW to have more discussion about the items that are proposed for the very generous, I guess, and broad funding grant that was provided to the village by the province a couple of months ago. We've already received the money. And this is the proposed expenditures that we began discussing last week.
Did we get any more details? Some of them were going to be sending in some price quotes. Have we been able to narrow these, tighten these
Yes,
up?
we did. We got the detailed public address sound system for mayor and council. And we've got the detailed proposal for the laptops.
Do we have the numbers on those, please?
Pardon?
Do we have those numbers available?
No, I didn't include them. They're within the budget that's proposed here. I can send them to you if you want, but this is sort of an administrative thing that,
Okay.
you know, once we get the budget, generally we look for the best deal within that framework.
Okay,
Could I make a suggestion?
certainly.
So at the last meeting, we had various discussions on various items here. Some I believe everyone kind of agreed on, makes sense. And then there's a few that are sticking points, possibly. There's clearly a very, as our CAO Ann mentioned, it's a very generous grant. We want to use it wisely. The amounts on here, just here, don't add up to a total, you know, a lot to start. But I have a suggestion, which is a two-pipe system where we're able to at least pick ones on here that we all can agree on easily and have them move forward as what I would call a pipe one, and then have a pipe two, which are items where we need to discuss further or other items can be added. And so you always have a pipe two that's being discussed. And if things on pipe two are easily agreed upon, then we can move them into action phase. So you've got an action phase agreed, and you've got these are items for consideration. Otherwise, we could spend a lot of time focusing on the items of contention here and not really get any comfort with approving this as one whole plan. That's my suggestion, is a two-pipe system.
I don't disagree. I think that's a good idea. What do you think, CAO?
I think that's a great idea, because I think, yeah, some of them are pretty intuitive and other ones require more discussion.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning and pick what's going to be in pipe A.
Okay.
So let's start with the laptops. Does everybody agree on that number of $6,000 for laptops?
Yep, reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Councilman Craig? Councillor Craig, are you there?
He gave the high signal.
I'm
My
sorry?
computer's very slow right now, so when I mute and unmute, it takes a few minutes to kick in. Yes,
Oh.
I agree.
And Councillor Polson?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Okay, and that just leaves me. I still thought that was a lot of money, but
I do too, but
I think $6,000 for is I'm hoping it came under budget. So we'll go ahead with the laptops. It seems to be the consensus. Keyless entry system for the village and the rec center. All in
Yes.
agreement?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
yeah, okay.
Councillor Paulson,
Yes, I do agree, and I'd also like to discuss the total of these expenditures at this point comes to about $95,000. And that leaves $170,000 over. And so I would like to brainstorm ideas of where we could use that money on perhaps a major project.
yeah, right now, Councillor Paulson, all we're gonna do is approve what all of us agree on right now. And then we'll look at what's left and what's remaining. That's the hot
Right.
topics.
But I'm just thinking ahead about the keyless entry system for the Kelsey Rec Center and looking at the possibility of having new doors at the Kelsey Center. So that would be included in the installation of the entry doors. But for now, I guess we can approve this. It's
No, that's
2000.
can we approve it to where the village office and we wait on the rec center just to go over the doors? Or can we
Well,
get
it's
quote on the doors?
It's only $2,000, so I think I would be okay with approving both of them and then including that in if we do any other upgrades there.
Okay. Everybody concur?
I
All
do
in
not
favor?
know. I don't concur with keyless entry.
May I ask why, Councillor Craig?
I think keys work just fine, and I think it's an unnecessary expense.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, sure. Everybody knows how to use a key in a door, and it's not hard to do it. And it works so far, so good. And I don't think keyless entry is an expense that's warranted.
Okay, CFO, or pardon me, CAO?
I think the CFO did the research on this, so if I can call on the CFO to comment on the research.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and CAO. One of the issues that council should probably be aware of is there's many keys floating around in the community from over the years. We've only recently just started a key log where people are signing out keys. We're keeping a record of what keys people have. So I think this is in essence, it's a real security issue. We don't know who has keys to the center. So I think that was kind of the driving force between getting the keyless entry system installed.
I agree with the CFO because as mentioned, there is, I don't know how many people in this community have keys to the office that may not have been turned in or easily cut from somebody's keychain. So that's why I believe that the keyless entry system is the way to go at this point, because we will eliminate any security issues going forward.
I also,
I think it's easier just to have the locks changed and continue with the key and the alarm code. But that's my opinion.
CAO?
Well, thank you, Mayor Baker. I think part of the reason for this funding is to minimize risk of disease and to avoid touching services. So initially, the keyless entry was one of many solutions to try and reduce the opportunity for transmission of the illness. So in addition to the security thing, we looked at it rather than just changing the locks, rather upgrading to keyless entry so that we could have a bit of a record of who came in when and if we ever needed it, and also, which we already probably can do through the security system. But just to minimize opportunity for touching surfaces, really, if we were going that way anyway.
Okay, so let's have a vote on that, please. Okay, we'll start with Councillor Polson
What are we having a vote? Did you
to
say?
go ahead with the keyless entry system.
Yes, I agree to go ahead with it.
Okay, and Councillor Craig is against,
That is right. I'm against.
and Councillor Kirschner.
I'm in agreement. One question though, is there a log automatically made up of who comes in?
No, we would only access that data if we ever had any reason to, Councillor Kirschner.
So it is available.
I think it's available now through our security system because there'd be a record of who punched in.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'll go on with it.
Okay, and I agree, so we'll move ahead
Oh, what about?
with the keyless.
I'm gonna vote yes, just for your record.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you. I apologize, Councillor Tinsley. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Sorry, couldn't see you. It's not that you're out of sight, out of mind, really. Minor renovations, prepared access and egress using the Kelsey Center, plexiglass installation, better marking physical separation, new front doors to the Kelsey Center, center with a visible entry. Okay, let's start with Councillor Polson.
I think the plexiglass is a good idea for separating the people coming in and going out. And I also agree with the new front doors of the Kelsey Center that are, you have a visible entry. So they have glass in the door so that the people inside can see who is outside. And I'd also like to see not maybe included with this is a automatic opening, handicapped opening with the front doors, because at this point there isn't. So people using the ramp to get up with their walker or their wheelchair still have to try and pull the door open or get somebody else to do it. And I think that would be work well with the glass in the doors and the handicap access.
Thank you. I also agree with Councillor Polson. I mean, it also eliminates the touch. If there is that automatic door open for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If it's done on sensor, for example, then there is no touching of the door, which would lessen the opportunity for transmission. Okay. So does everybody agree? Let's go to Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Tinsley.
I agree.
Councillor Craig.
I agree with the doors, but not with the plexiglass.
Can you expand on that, please?
Our WorkSafe parameters that were given to Darlene and Tony have been followed, so we are compliant with our WorkSafe. Plexiglass does not prevent, because this is an airborne virus, does not prevent the virus from going up and over. I think we have already complied with the WorkSafe BC regulations as is. And I don't think this is an extra expenditure that we need when we can allocate those resources elsewhere.
Okay. My concern with not having the plexiglass in place, especially at the entrance, or separation in between councillors and staff during our regular council meetings, is that the way the chairs are set up at the entrance, I mean, it's very easy if somebody sneezes or what have you, where that transmission is very real possibility. At that point where the plexiglass offers the people a little bit of security, more so than a chair with a rope on it, is my thought. Okay. So the majority is going with the minor renovations to the Kelsey Center.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The public address system. Councillor Polson.
I'm having about this when, if there's a chance that we're ever going to get back into council chambers, would this be required?
It will be in terms of, as you've noticed from past council meetings, without COVID, there was a lot of people in the audience that had a very tough time hearing because we have a lot of elderly people that have a difficult time hearing. So having that available throughout and going forward, I think is a good thing.
Okay, I think that,
Councillor Kushner,
Yeah, I agree.
Councillor Tinsley,
Yes, I agree, because it'll also fit into recording systems as well, for all the reasons we've discussed, so I agree.
Councillor Craig.
I agree.
Okay, so we're going ahead on that. Grocery delivery, $6,000. Driver and gas van for weekly pickup and delivery of groceries to residents for online order. Councillor Polson.
I have reservations about this one because it seems like a small amount for a weekly delivery, and it may not just be one trip to town a week, depending on how many people are using it. So I'd like information. We actually prepared a pickup and delivery system. What was that called, Wes, that went to SRD when there was some funding available for delivering to vulnerable people, and it included having to have a cooler in your vehicle so that you're transporting food that's frozen, and the people having their own containers that their groceries could be put in when the driver got to their place, and it was a lot more than $6,000. So it's I'm just not sure about price for this being realistic.
Okay, so what number would be comfortable and adequate, do you think?
I think we need more information on how it's going to be done, and
Okay,
how many days a week and that sort of thing, what client will be. And if
Okay.
there would be a charge to the person, like for the gas, or whatever.
I'm sorry, did you have your hand up, CAO?
I didn't, but I could answer that in terms of the calculation, but I see Councillor Tinsley's hand is up, so maybe.
Yes, sorry, I saw you flashing.
I would suggest that this was one that had quite a bit of discussion last time. I would suggest this would be one that would be put into pipe B.
Let's
And
go to B.
reconsider and gather more information.
Okay, now, does everybody else agree that it should go into B? Councillor Kushner?
Yes, the way it is now, I'm kind of against it, but yes.
Okay, Councillor Craig?
Well, I'll be against it whether it goes into B or C or D or E. And I'll tell you why, because the Sayward Emergency Preparedness Committee has already tackled this issue. Yes, Sue is right. Sean Koopman with the SRD had funding for this program. And there was already a plan in place to do grocery delivery with the SEPC and with volunteers out in the valley. So this has already been done, and this has already been hashed over. So with the village getting involved, the funding with Sean Koopman involved a nonprofit. So you had to umbrella it with a nonprofit organization, which Sayward Futures was. There was a bit of a complicated process, but it was very doable. There was also a faction within the SEPC that had their own volunteer network to do specific grocery delivery. So what you're doing is you're redoing the efforts of stuff that's already been accomplished. So
Is it ongoing?
definitely you can put it in the second category, but I'm going to vote against it either way because it's already been done.
Sorry, Councillor Craig, is this an ongoing thing that they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely it was. Yeah. So as long as the funding remains available through the SRD
So
for this
why don't we get-
program, then the funding will be there.
Okay, so why don't we have our CFO, or CAO, pardon me, do a little research into that and see what they have going? And whether
I
or
would
not.
definitely request a meeting or at least an informal with Sean Koopman at the SRD to get his take on it at the very minimum.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tinsley?
Put it in pipe B. That's the whole concept here, is things that can't be easily sorted out. They just go into pipe B. It doesn't mean anything's gonna happen that can be reassessed another time. We can move forward.
Very well. Community Celebration picnic party. $15,000 for the party. Councillor Polson? A or B?
After listening to the news today, I think this is way far down the road. And I would suggest that it go into pipe B.
Okay. Councillor Kushner, B or A?
Yeah, B.
B. Councillor
Yes.
Tinsley?
B for me.
Councillor Craig?
B.
Okay. That's on to B. Village website, $8,000, 8,000 additional dollars. A or B, Councillor Polson?
A.
Councillor Kushner?
B.
Councillor Tinsley?
A.
Councillor Craig?
A.
Okay, so we're gonna move that into the A on the majority. Well, actually, you want to discuss that further? No, we're gonna move that into A because we have the majority.
Yeah.
Workstation for public, $5,000. Councillor Polson, A or B?
I would say B for now.
Councillor
With,
Kushner?
get it for the-
Councillor Kushner, A or B?
I'm still looking at it.
Councillor Tinsley?
I would say B, given our discussion that there already are some resources available, so we can kind of discuss that further, put it in B for now.
Councillor Craig?
B.
Yeah, and I'm good with B too.
Okay, B as well. Tax relief for residents, $25,000. Just to expand on a little bit on that, before we make an A or B, is I was looking at the census today from 2015, showing what the income average and everything else, so I still quite support it. So Councillor Polson?
My
A or
comment
B?
on it. Can I give my
Sure.
comment first? I think if you're going to give someone a one-time only 85% or $85 rebate or whatever we're calling it, that's great for this year. They get the $85 off their taxes, so it's just like they don't even know they get that money. They just pay $85 less. So when tax time comes around next year and there's not this $85, they're going to have to pay the $85 plus the increase for the current year. So
Correct.
then they're going to be very angry that they haven't, the increase has done very little for them. And in fact, it's increased their taxes in their minds for the following year.
Yeah, to me,
So
it would be it would be made very clear to them. But obviously, this is going to be a hot topic, so why don't we move that to B?
I agree, B.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes, I agree with B because I made my feelings on that clear last meeting.
Okay, Councillor Craig?
I'm good with A.
Okay, well, I agree with Councillor Craig on that one, but let's move it to B. So transfer the remaining to reserves. Funding may be transferred to reserve for very broad use, provided criteria in the future, and we'll get into more detail on that later. Okay,
Could I say that I would like to see a separate GL made for this this funding so that we can track exactly what is used and then what's available, rather than putting it into the reserves and somehow it gets mixed in with other things, and then it's hard to find and account for.
Mhm.
So I don't know if the CFO could do that, but set up a separate ledger so that we can just glance at it and say, okay, we've got $127,000 left, and not have to go searching through the reserves looking for how much we've spent and left.
CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Poulsen, I like your thinking, and yes, that was the intent of what I was going to do is have it in a separate account for sure.
Okay.
Okay,
That-
perfect.
Then
Everybody
I'm for-
agree?
I agree with that. I agree 100% with Councillor Polson.
Councillor Craig?
I agree.
Councillor Tinsley?
I agree.
It's okay. So the recommendation is the committee of the whole receive the COVID-19 restart for local governments proposed expenditure report. So I need a motion, please.
So, sorry to interrupt, but I believe we need to, as amended, in terms of we're approving what we agreed was going into
Yes.
pipe A. And so it's as amended, the pipe A things are approved, the
You are
pipe B
correct.
ones are to be moved to pipe B.
Okay. So recommendation that we
Can I also
receive.
interrupting Mayor Baker? Sorry, I had my hand up too, but it's easy to
Oh,
miss
sorry,
on the
see you.
screen. That's
Okay,
okay. I was going to say we could bring this back with, we'll bring it back to the council meeting next week for full resolutions on the details. Because this is a cow meeting, and so we should do that at a council meeting.
Ah, right, yeah.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to remind council that last week, when we went through the staff reports, staff were directed to look at a way to obtain the hazmat gear for staff, regardless
Yes.
of whether received the funding. So this would be the logical place for that. So with direction from council, I'd like to include that in the work for next week, along with the A's from tonight, and bring
Yes.
that back.
Perfect. Everybody, Councillor Polson, you agree?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Craig?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Tinsley?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, we'll go ahead there. Thank you. So now we, in terms of the financial plan draft that we have, we're not going to be going through that line by line, correct?
We could go through any line that you like at this point. It was really up to council's direction as to how detailed and any questions you might have on specific services. But we wanted to give it to you as an overview so that when we went into detail next week, the next COW meeting, you've at least got this for a week or so to go through, and you'll have a chance to see the breakdowns for each service. But you'll note that some of those questions that the CFO had referenced in the beginning, like the community to community, the community forest, those initiatives, we talked about them on our project sheet, and I think, you know, they're sort of there as placeholders. It's not necessary for council to make a decision now. Obviously, with COVID, we wouldn't have a community to community, and the community forest is something more of a long-term thing to follow up on through correspondence and get started, but they're there as placeholders and questions. I think though, at some point when we get into the details, the CFO would like some time spent on some of those detailed questions, like the travel, training, and education budget for council, and so we'll get into that next week, next COW.
Okay, sounds good.
Now.
Okay, so let's do that.
Sounds
Could I
good.
have,
I'm sorry?
could I have a comment? please?
Certainly.
I went through it today very thoroughly, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the effort that the CFO has put into drawing this draft up. And what I really like is where she has included the grant amounts on the pages, where it applies to. For instance, the non-capital project items, and for admin, the office carpet, flooring, and counter, because as I was going through each section, I saw that there was an increase in each, in one of those ledgers, and I had it circled to ask a question about it, but then when I got to the end and saw, oh, this is where it's going, that's really helpful to have it separated out like that. So great job, Lisa, and also great job to Anne for all the work you're doing.
Yeah, I know.
Very
I appreciate. Sorry, go ahead.
It's very impressive. It's
Yes.
very impressive.
Yeah, Lisa did, you did a great job on that. I like the fact that the recreation center is separate as well, so we can visit that. So, yeah, no, I think we're all impressed by it. We'll go into it detail line by line unless anybody has a question. Sorry, go ahead, CFO.
Yes,
CAO?
CFO? Or
CAO.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out one thing that, you know, we haven't had an opportunity to do a full council orientation, and you may know this, but one thing that's really important in local governments is that there's a requirement for each service to stay alone, a standalone rather. So each service has to pay for itself and cover its own costs, and the taxpayers who receive the benefit of that have to pay that cost. So other than grants and that sort of thing. So it is a requirement to show the complete cost of each service as a separate standalone item. And also some of those services we pay to the SRD who we buy the service from. For example, the building inspector, the planning service, waste management. There's a number like that are services that we obtain through the SRD, and so we pay for that. So that's, I just wanted to make that comment about the requirement for services, and you know, the fact that they can't be lending money between each other like siblings might, but they, you know, there's some fixed rules, and maybe we'll get into that if you know, if you think it's necessary at the next cow.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So refer to the next cow. Okay, so we're moving on from B, 7B, correct? So we adjust that on our screen here for the agenda. There we go. Any new business? No new business. Okay, question period. For the purpose of the question period to permit, do we have any questions from the public for our Cal? Or is this something that's reserved for the council meeting?
Yeah, we did not receive any.
I got a question this afternoon, and I think it's in a phone call, a message, and I think I'll just refer it on to Anne, because it was a constituent asking a question that she had already asked at council before, and I think it was very, very fast that you replied to the last two questions or three questions that we got with the meeting last week. So I'll just get in touch with you probably tomorrow and pass that message on so that she can get her question answered.
As mentioned, it does take a lot of time for the CAO to respond and research these questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think when some of the questions are, you know, people have had for a while. So I think once that gets out, now I know that there is Lee Ettinger wanted hers to be made public, the answers to the questions. So we need to determine whether or not, like, where do we put them? If, you know, they're going to be public, because if they asked at a public council meeting, then everybody be aware of them to begin with. So I think we need to come up with a plan and have all these questions online, either part of the agenda where people can see it at home and review it. Does everybody agree? Councillor
Yes.
Craig?
I do agree, and I have to step out for 1 second. I'll be right back. But
Okay,
yes, I agree.
thank you. Councillor Kushner,
I agree also.
make all the questions public.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Paulson.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, CAO, sorry.
What about Counselor Tinsley? Does he
can't
agree
see
or
ya.
does he not agree? I don't know. Let's ask him.
We gotta put lights on your glasses.
Let's ask Councillor Paulson. Where did Councillor Tinsley go? Councillor Tinsley, sorry.
I see. I agree, but we obviously we would need to have a policy that's presented first to the public, so it's very clear. If we're stating like I agree with total openness, total everything available to everyone, right?
Yeah.
But we also have to ensure that we have made this a policy that's brought forward and communicated as well, so that people aren't under a misunderstanding of the way things were done before and the way they're being done in the future. That's my only thought.
I agree. Now, there's going to be some questions that are going to be where they're not going to want it to be public, and we can work on
Correct.
that at that time.
Now,
But I
yeah,
agree with Councillor Tinsley, because I can see him now. I apologize. Okay, so we're not going in camera today. Now, if you like, we can stretch this meeting out for another hour. No? Nobody's interested in that? Okay, so adjournment, recommended resolution that the committee of the whole meeting for January 12th, 2021 be adjourned. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Well, hang on, Norm, we're not done yet.
Oh, I'm not leaving.
I'll second it just so Norm can leave.
Okay, thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
All the best.
Thanks, everybody.
All the best.
Thank you. Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.